Hey there, and welcome to this webinar. We are presenting if we can go to we are presenting data-centric design for responsible AI. Dr. Shaista Hussein has taken great care in curating this presentation for us. Previously, she was a clinical pathologist, and through her research in researching diseases, she started getting deeper into statistics, machine learning, and eventually she pivoted entirely into machine learning as a profession. And now she's co-founded a startup called SafeCheck that monitors and explains and expands on the function of AI and ML algorithms to ensure that they're safe, responsible, explainable, and that the impact that they have in society is transparent. So, with that, I'll let Dr. Shaista uh, get on with her presentation, and if she has anything else to say, the
Just want to
floor is
thank
yours.
you again. Thank you for the opportunity, Joaquin. You're always such a great host, and always sharing great information with the masses. So very grateful to you, and I'm sure everyone else is grateful to you as well. We'll start with data-centric design for responsible AI. I'll preface by saying I think that all AI solutions should be data-centric. That means that all AI solutions should be designed if you consider that they're systematically engineered based on the data systems that are provided. So we'll consider the data sets or the components of data, something like the pieces of Lego you see here. And ultimately, what you want to do is accept that the data sets, these pieces, are the ground truth of how your model, which is these outputs, are going to be, such that the machine learning models fit the ground truths rather than the other way around. So you don't have say I'm going to use an ARIMA model or an LSTM model and then go look for the data set. It's the other way around. You use what data is first available and then you build the model. And so all AI solutions should be like this because no AI solution is privy to data drift, which is something we'll get into in a minute. Um, and the idea of something being data centric means that it's programmatic. It's designed for scaling. It involves a lot of data annotation and labeling, and you would often need a subject matter expert to assign weights and biases so that you know that within a used data set or within a given data set, that the right features or the right variables are given the right amount of attention, and those that are not as important are given less amount of attention. And ultimately what this does is it increases model speed, accuracy, and costs. And there have been use cases in banks, there's been use cases in hospital medical records, use cases with insurance companies that have used this methodology of applying data first and then developing a model and have found increases in accuracy anywhere from 25 to 85% in accuracy and speed, and massive reduction in costs because between your deployment and your updates, you have a lot less work to do when you are starting from a point of a data set. So the traditional process of data centric AI, the traditional process of data involvement in a machine learning model, so within the ML ops cycle, is you have something called data pre-processing, where you look at your data set, you make sure it's annotated, it's labeled, that there are missing values taken care of, that null values are taken care of. And so then you have a different version. Once that pre-processing step is done, you have a sort of updated version of that data set, which is then used within the model. And traditionally, that's where it ends. Now you start working on the machine learning model experimentation and deployment, and you're done. But when something is data centric, what happens is you allow yourself time to look for data misfit or data inconsistency. You do basically a quality assessment. So what you're doing is making sure that the pieces of data that are included in the data set are relevant. Like I said, that the weights and biases have been assigned, that there are managed null or missing values, not just deleted. And so there's a lot of techniques within data science that allows you to either eliminate or add a mean, or play around with things like missing values or null values. And that can often change the shape of the distribution of the data. So what you do is when you do an error analysis within data-centric AI, you give special attention to make sure that the distribution stays the same so that the predictions that the model is making later on stay consistent. drift. And you want to make sure that this process stays dynamic. It means through every iteration after a singular deployment, you go back and you check the data set. You make sure that it's up to date. You make sure that new pieces of information match the traditional architecture. And you want to make sure that you're doing benchmarking between the training and the test data sets within the original algorithm and in updated algorithms. So that takes us to data drift. And this is one of the biggest reasons why we are promoting data-centric AI, because no model can avoid data drift. And what is data drift? It means your model, any model, will get worse over time. And the reason for that is because there's a difference between the original training data set, those Lego pieces that you used when you first designed a model, versus once the model is out in deployment and you have new incoming data. So any inconsistency in those two, which will happen inevitably, creates data drift. So the first reason for data drift is what? There are changes in the input data, meaning the data from the post-deployment model, that changes in distribution over time. A second reason would be a change in the relationship between your X and your Y variables. A third reason is that training data becomes outdated or doesn't represent a current condition. So I'll give you an example is if you have data trained for a stock market, for example, and the model has gotten used to a certain set of data that it's been trained on, and suddenly there's a massive earthquake or some natural disaster that happens in the world and it changes the volatility of the market. Suddenly, the data that's coming in through the input processing will be very different than what it had been trained on, making the model redundant. So how do you manage data drift? Well, number one, you start with responsible AI design, which is a data-centric design, which means from the beginning, you know that you're focusing on the data set, on the pre-processing step, on the error analysis before you go into model experimentation. You accept, and the team accepts, that there will be continuous monitoring, continuous evaluation, that the updated model post-deployment should be correlated to the new incoming data, and that we would select models that are traditionally drift averted. And other such models include time distribution methods or custom models that can be used to detect drift. So some of the tests that can be used to detect the drift have very fancy names, but essentially all do the same thing, and they detect a change between the traditional training data and then the incoming data that's coming in from a deployed model. So the Kolmogorov-Smirnov test is the first one. It's non-parametric, and it basically looks at the two sets of data, meaning the original training data and then the incoming data, and it says, does it come from the same sort of distribution of data? And there's a formula that you apply to check to see if the distribution is consistent. The Page-Hinckley method is another one, and it detects a change in the mean of the series of data. So similarly, it looks at the original training data and then incoming data, applies mean thresholds, threshold values and decision functions, and then a value of 1 or 0 decides whether that there is a significant change within the means of the two data set. And population stability index is another one that compares only categorical values variables within data sets. And then we look at this to see if over time there's been a change in the distribution. So this one becomes important when you consider that the data drift can happen suddenly. Like in that stock market example I told you, it could happen in iterations where bursts, for example, in a weather prediction app, you could see that every month or every 2 months, sort of consistently, there's a deviation from the predicted. The data drift can happen over time. And in that case, you may not detect these changes. So you want to be able to have a continuous monitoring and evaluation to keep looking to see what's been happening with the data set. And if you would like your data or your models evaluated, we suggest you get safe-checked at safecheck.ai. And thank you, Swarm.
And
Ready?
with that, yeah, if there's any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. But I can already ask some questions. Who would be the ideal person to get in touch with you?
So basically, businesses that are using AI solutions, especially when there are sensitive populations involved, or end user safety is of concern, or any business that wants to make sure that their model stays sustainable, that it doesn't become redundant after 3 or 6 or 9 months. You would want to get safe checked, and we check for data drift, we check for model drift, we also check for data integrity. So from a data-centric point of view, you could hand over your project to us and let us evaluate it, or you could go through an audit process with us and be informed of where there are missing areas or where there are gaps within your solution. So any business using AI solutions, government regulators, consulting companies who need to do these kinds of evaluations, definitely get in touch.
So we have one comment from Milan McGraw. He's saying amazing content, and the message is spot on. Safe. And
Thank you, Milan.
we have Brandon Copeland. He's asking, can you talk a little bit more about SafeCheck.ai?
Sure. Thanks, Brandon. Thanks, Milan. So safecheck.ai is our interface. It's our landing page, our website, where customers would log in and select which type of which package they want to have their business AI solution evaluated. They would run through an LLM assisted chatbot style. So our little bot will carry you through the audit process. And the audit process will take you through the various aspects of evaluating your solution. This would include responsible AI, where we've quantified sort of the responsible metrics. This would include international regulatory compliances, things like the ISO 42001, SADAYA here in Saudi. So we've got an full international coverage of regulations and compliance. We then look at, like we said, your data, the integrity, the drift, the model integrity, drift, efficiency, performance metrics, LLM, hallucination risks. And then we look at end user safety. So we look at the impact of the model on society, on the environment, how safe it is for children, for people with disabilities. So it's a very comprehensive evaluation that takes you through all these steps, and then you get a score. Once you receive your score, it comes with a report card, and the report card highlights what you've done well, what needs improvement, and wherever we've identified areas that need improvement, we will suggest potential fixes as a diagnostic method, and then you get a certificate if you've passed. So that digital certificate can be used by your company to promote and say, we've been safe checked, we are safe, a third party has audited us. This group recognizes us as having passed, for example, end user safety or environmental safety, etc.
And
Hopefully that answers the question.
yeah, I think that does. And there are two different levels of your service. One is a non-intrusive knowledge component where you share that very finely tuned chatbot that contains all that comprehensive knowledge on how to stay compliant with regulations. And then there's that other one where you are involved with evaluating the model and ensuring that it doesn't have any unsavory biases, or it's not causing
Precisely, yeah. I'll explain that
harm.
in detail. I'll explain that. So thanks for that. The first component is the audit or the sort of risk assessment that is conducted, and that is non-invasive, meaning we don't require you to share your data set, nor do you need to require, nor are you required to share your source code or algorithm. So everything remains safe within your hands, but you go through a very intensive set of questions in our risk assessment that lead us towards being able to make decisions or final statements about your model and about your data set, and then guide you. So that's the non-invasive component, and that's the primary component. One offering we have is when we are evaluating the transparency, which is the explainability of a model, we offer our customers to share their repo or their source code or their algorithm with us, so that we can then apply our explainable AI tooling to give you a visual output which explains how your model is making its decisions for its end users. So for example, if you have an AI model that's predicting the likelihood of a car accident in a certain area, you would want to know why is it making that decision. And so if you have an explainable tool, it would tell you it features 1, 2, and 3 are have been assigned this high weight and this bias, and therefore it's making this prediction, and this is the confidence interval or the statistical value of confidence associated with making that prediction. So it basically tells the end user, the model decided that this is a likely answer, and we are this sure that it's correct.
I really appreciate engaging with Dr. Shaista Hussein and producing content and educational webinars. For one thing, I think we're highly aligned in our principles and what we're looking to shape the world to be. But I really think that her solution is a non-invasive way to dip your toes and get acclimated to all these rapidly changing regulations, and also being able to take some sort of control over how you employ this in your organization. I think it's way cheaper than hiring a lawyer, and it's just it makes things a lot more accessible. Um,
Yeah, you think you covered it right there. That's when looking at making the decision whether you want to be safe checked or not, or whether you want it to be evaluated by any group or not. I think one of the important things to consider is you've invested a certain amount, X million amount of money into an AI solution for your company. Great. You've got that out into the public. You're spending Y million dollars on marketing. That's great. Now you've got users. What happens if one, that model becomes redundant after 3 months? What has happened to your investment? Or two, with the data drift or with model drift or with some other bias, that model is no longer predicting the way it should or predicting the value, that Y output that it should. What happens then? Or three, what happens if there's some sort of effect like what happened with was it Gemini, with Google Gemini, where it predicted some sort of racially biased output? What happens then to your reputation of your company, or what happens to the litigations that come about as a result of false or wrong predictions? So you've got all these scenarios to think about after you've made that initial investment, after you've marketed this great product to the world, and then you say now the model failed, or it's biased, or there's litigation, or and then what? And then you need, like you said, a lawyer, and then you're going to need money for what do you call it, repair, image repair. Then you're going to need money to re-promote a new product. So why not just get safe checked and know the quality of your product from the beginning, know what needs fixing, so then you can invest just in those areas that need the fixing, get a badge, show the world that you're safe. And if you're not, know what you need to fix it, come back, and then get safe checked. It's a preventative way of saving a lot of money in the long run.
I think if we can draw a parallel here, if you were to put yourself in the shoes of somebody that is part of the food supply chain, there are a lot of insurance and compliance requirements that must be met. You must have indemnity insurance. You must be certified with ISO processes and standards. You have to have people come in and inspect your facilities for the food that is potentially going to have an impact on population health. Um, would you rather employ faulty food supply chain and produce a product that can cause irreparable harm or death to people, or would you rather take a proactive approach to have higher quality product yields, better processes, and all these things? If we bring this to the world of artificial intelligence and virtual systems, this is the same thing. I mean, you have something that is producing a tangible product or value for your end consumers. There is your brand reputation. There's all these things, but there can be irreparable harm that can be produced or impressed on the population, and you will be liable for that. So we don't want to be liable for legal or regulatory compliance fines. We want to be proactive in managing the safe implementation of these systems. So
Precisely. Yeah, and it is exactly that. It's what you said. So you want to be proactive, and things like the ISO compliance. If you wanted to know that you're ready, your system is ready for ISO compliance, and you got safe checked, we would highlight specifically what needs attention, what's missing, what you should add to become ISO compliant, and that's an option. So, like you said, it's a proactive approach to being protective and preventing any potential harm in the future.
with that, if you have any additional questions, we're here for an additional 6 minutes. If we're not available while you ask your questions or leave a comment or anything else that you'd like to engage with, you could still leave it on the bottom of the webinar, and Dr. Shaista Hussein will get to it when she has time, or when we have time to respond adequately. But for the time being, I think she covered it well. Data-centric AI is a dynamic and iterative process where you need to keep a close eye on how models exist and evolve over time. The world is not a static place. Your organization is not a static place. We are not static individuals or agents. We grow and learn and evolve over time, and we have to make sure that as we grow and evolve, we don't drift into aimlessness
Well said.
or unintentional harm. That's the
Precisely.
bottom line.
Very well said. It's a dynamic process. It means we have to constantly update it. You need to have your eye on the ball. If you are playing with AI, if you are deploying AI out into the world, there is a certain onus of responsibility on you for the product that you've put out into the public's hands. And in order to manage that responsibility, you want to have a set of guidelines, a set of rules, a metric book. And that's what SafeCheck will give you. It'll give you a metric book and guide you towards what's missing, what should be added, what's safe, what's unsafe, who's at risk using your product, and most importantly, how to protect your investment in the model that you've deployed out into the world. So thank you again. And as always, so eloquent and articulate you are, so gracious of a host and granting opportunities to share knowledge on these platforms. Joaquin, you're one of a kind, and I hope the world sees your greatness.
Thank you for your lavish compliments. I don't get tired of hearing them. Uh, if you want to hear these lavish compliments, reach out to Dr. Shaista to be one of her customers as well. So, have a good day, everybody.
You
Well,
too. Thank you.
tune in for the next one as well. Uh,
Yes, everybody look forward to the next one as well. Take care. Ciao.